Welcome to the Hair of the Dog podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Begley. And oh my goodness, if I got a treat for you today. I have the queen of money mindset, the one, the only, Denise Duffield-Thomas, joining me on the podcast today. And we're breaking it all down. From pet photographers' reluctance to charge, all the way to my childhood shoes. So stay tuned.
Welcome to the Hair of the Dog podcast. If you're a pet photographer ready to make more money and start living a life by your design, you've come to the right place. And now, your host, pet photographer, travel addict, chocolate martini connoisseur, Nicole Begley.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hair of the Dog podcast. With me today, we have a very, very special guest, someone that I've been listening to in my ears for years and has made quite an impact in my life, Denise Duffield-Thomas from DeniseDT.com. Welcome to the Hair of the Dog podcast.
Well, I'm super honored because I'm obsessed with my dogs. So it's good that I can combine my love of money mindset and my love of my dogs in one interview.
That is awesome. Yes, anytime we can combine dogs and anything, life is good.
Anything. I was at the hair salon today and someone brought their dog in and it was just instant happiness for everybody in there.
Yes, absolutely. So as you know, I have a big community of pet photographers, and we love to chat about money mindset here on the Hair of the Dog podcast because I believe success is so much more than just figuring out what your pricing is. Because, if you do all the numbers and you get your pricing ready, but you still have this like energetic, just yucky feeling around your money or what you're charging, I feel like it's just really, really hard to get any clients because of that just yuckiness that you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's every industry for sure. But what I find is the reason why I love coming on industry specific podcasts is because people try and tell me that they're the exception. They don't have to do money mindset work because they're like, no, but our blocks are real, Denise. We're justified. We're allowed to undercharge. And I hear this from every industry. So it's my favorite thing.
I love it. Yeah, that's definitely got to be quite the perspective you get talking to the hairdressers and we were just saying you were just on.
Yes. Oh, I love dance, so I can't charge for it. Wedding professionals. Oh, I love it, so I can't charge for it. And photographers are really interesting, right? Because photography is one of those things that's a record of our human lives. It's been around for such a long time. And yet we still discount it. And then you go into the different niches where, I'm a family photographer, so I can't charge. I'm a baby photographer, so I can't charge. I'm a maternity, I can't charge. Pet photographers. I know you think you're all too, I don't know, you are exempt from money mindset work, but you're not. Because, let's face it, pet photography is one of those things we think, oh, it's so new. The earliest photographers took pictures of their pets too.
Right. That's what I always like to say too. If you look at art and you go to a museum, there's a lot of pictures of animals.
The Egyptians, they were obsessed with their cats.
Right.
There are old, books and records where people talk about their cats. And, we're obsessed with our animals, and that's always going to be the case. So why do we think that that's not a valuable thing to offer to people? Even more so, you can be married to someone for 70 years, but your pet only lives for a short period of time. I'd way rather have more pictures of my pets than wedding pictures.
Yeah, it's a funny story. Whenever my husband and I travel, we end up sending more pictures of the animals to each other than we do of the kids.
Yes, same. My mum was babysitting and I was like, how are my babies? And she knew I meant the dogs.
Oh yeah, and the kids too. Yes, but also the dogs.
But that heartwarming video, and it's like in a classroom, and there's a box, and the teacher says, "Go and look inside the box. There's a picture of my favorite student." And all the
I haven't
kids
seen that.
Oh, it's like this beautiful heartwarming music, and each student goes and looks in the box, and then they kind of laugh, and at the end, it's revealed that it's a mirror. And
yeah.
I'm going to do the same to my family, but I'm just going to put a picture of my dog in there. And so they'll look in there, I'll like, go and have a look at my favorite member of the family. And it will be a picture of one of my dogs. I'll be, he's my favorite. It's like, that's my favorite child. And they'll go and look and go, oh, no mirror. It's Albie.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So I feel like as a pet photographer, people definitely have that mindset issue. And then it turns into a guilt of, I want everybody to have what I can do. And, because everyone loves their dog, but this is a luxury, most pet photographers, several $1,000s for a session. So it becomes this luxury thing that then I think there becomes a guilt component to not being able to give it to everybody.
Of course. And trust me, I hear this so often. One of the case studies in my new book is someone who is a pelvic floor yoga teacher, helping people with horrible postpartum issues. Mm-hmm. And she said the same thing. I'm so passionate about this. I want everybody to have access to this kind of work. And again, I hear this from so many different industries too. But here's the thing, when you're undercharging and you're burning yourself out, you have zero overflow. Or I'm sure you see people leave the industry all the time because they're burnt out. And when you are charging win-win pricing to the majority of your clients appropriately, you have bandwidth then to come up with ideas where you can serve a lot more people. So in some industries, that is writing a book. So then people who can't work with you one-on-one can still get your wisdom. Or it could be being very generous with your free knowledge and information of, here are the tips of how to take your own photo shoots with your dogs. It's hard to have the bandwidth to do that when you're burning yourself out with one-on-one clients. Or it means you can be really generous and give scholarships every now and again. Or you can deliberately then do things like, whole day ones where people can get 1 or 2 snaps with their dogs. But when your default is undercharging, when your default is over-delivering, your impact actually becomes smaller and smaller because we only have so many hours in the day. When you're taken care of and you're charging win-win, because again, there's always people who will pay premium for anything, then you'll have so much bandwidth to give back, but without being resentful over it because it's not your default.
Right. That's a great point for sure. Absolutely. And something I think a lot of people in the industry struggle with because they are so much an empath and they lead with their heart. And, we just want to photograph all the puppies.
Of course. And I think this is the big thing that I really have to work with in so many different industries is you can either work really hard and kind of hate your job, or you can love what you do. And you're allowed to make money and love what you do. You're allowed to, but I think it just breaks that feeling of, no, but work is hard. Work is something you have to do that you don't like. And especially if you've left a corporate job to follow your dream of being a pet photographer or any kind of photographer, it feels like then that's a sacrifice you're making of going, wow, one path leads to money and one path, you know what, I've decided I'm going to be some sort of artist. So therefore I have to be a starving artist. Therefore I have to choose this path of undercharging, over-delivering and being broke. And it feels like if you converge those paths, then you're a sellout or you don't care or you're doing something somehow unethical. And again, I hear this in so many different industries, but we have to go and do our own inner work around that. What is worthy of charging for? What is real work? Am I allowed to have so much fun and still make a great profit and make a great living?
I love that. And, there's so much talk about finding your purpose. And I think just society in general over many, many years just like beats it into you of you go to school, you get a job, you do it for 40 years, then you retire, then you can have fun. And, our purpose, I think, is always tied to interest and always tied to following our passion, always tied to following our joy. And if that's what we're here on earth to do, then yes, we are going to have fun to do that. And yeah, you're exactly right that who made up the rule that said that you can't have fun or enjoy your work?
Well, you know what? There's a couple of things around that, right? One is that if you think back to your own experiences of work and what work is, most of us grew up watching that on TV, or it was just in our own families, right? And so often our own families' professions has a really big impact on how we feel about work. What was considered real work in your family? Also, what did you see on TV about creative people, about entrepreneurs? One, for me, I didn't really see a lot of female entrepreneurs.
Right.
I didn't see a lot of creatives like writers. And often then they were sort of shown as being a bit ditzy or bad with money, or again, that nurturer personality. Oh, I'm doing it, but I'm not making any money out of it. Or the other side of it, rich bitches. And so when would you have even seen, what was your impression? I'll put it back on you, Nicole. Growing up, what did you see? Who were photographers? Who were allowed to be photographers?
What was acceptable? I mean, back growing up, the industry has changed so much. It was definitely old men in a studio doing the Olin Mills, Sears, little portrait. There was definitely no animals involved, and it was just all very cut and dry, and this is how it is. But then just the general work, my parents were both had an entrepreneurial family, my grandparents. So then my parents both worked in those businesses. So I felt like I had at least a little bit of a heads up, or a little bit of a leg up of, hey, you can actually work for yourself. But I still saw them both working very hard. And, there was a lot of money stories too about, one of my big ones was easy come, easy go. Because of, my grandparents had a trucking business that, eventually went away. And then my dad was working in the mortgage industry in 2008 when that whole entire industry imploded. So there was a lot of, you can't control anything, and something bad can happen at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say even too, people who are growing up now, they're seeing different forms of work, right?
Right.
But I'm just talking for myself here. I'm 42, but I grew up in a world where there wasn't the internet. And so there was no way for people to leverage any business beyond where they geographically lived, right? There just wasn't the tools. And so I think people kind of our generation, we've lived in these two worlds, and our brains just can't quite comprehend that it's allowed to be easy and leveraged, because the tools just weren't available. It just breaks that dollar for effort relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember going to college. I'm 45, so I've just got a couple years on you. But I remember going to college. My roommate was like, "Do you think we'll have email?" And I said, "What's email?"
Yeah.
Yep. And we didn't even you didn't turn in written papers even in college, because not everyone had computers, and crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then that's really formative time, right? And then so, even probably throughout our 20s as well, it just wasn't available to entrepreneurs to be able to do that. And so now to think, wow, I can not only photograph people, but I can license my work. I have all these tools to make it easier for me to do the edits. So then it's easy for me to produce lots of work for them. It's not like you have to go, oh my God, it's, I have to buy more film and I'm going to waste the shots. And so I think it just doesn't feel quite right, as well as the fact that so many people still work in jobs that they don't like. So it feels like this guilty luxury to be able to do something you love and get paid for it. So I think it just breaks our brains a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What are some of, I think one of the hardest things of finding these different money mindsets, because, you talk about it all the time. You uncover one and then you're like, oh, all right, I got that one. Oh, well, there's a new one. Whoa. Okay. There's a new one over here. So what are some of your tricks for just kind of seeing where we are and helping shine the light on what some of our money stories are, so that we can start to break them?
Okay, well, I've been asking everyone interviewing me, I've been asking them a question, because it's really fun to turn the tables.
Okay, like it.
Tell me about your school shoes.
Tell me what my school shoes.
Tell me about your school shoes.
Oh gosh. I honestly don't remember. They were just like, okay, normal shoes. Nothing special about them, nothing bad about them. They were just your average shoe that I remember.
What did your parents talk about, like when it came to like buying things like school shoes?
Well, I remember my grandma. I don't remember my parents really ever buying school shoes, or I wasn't with them. But I remember my grandma would take us school shopping before school started each year. And we'd go to, oh gosh, I forget what it was called, but it was like, department store back in the day, like a nice department store. And she would buy us always an outfit. And so that's my remembrance of, school shopping for as long as, at least elementary and middle school, all through those years. And then when I was old enough for high school, it was here's some money to go shopping.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask that is that sometimes, and I try and keep it pretty open just to say, tell me about your school shoes, because for some people, they immediately remember different things. So for some people, they say, oh, well, this kid had this and I had this. And so they start to remember the first time they remember contrast coming up about what they wanted. And so some people might say, well, I had the real geeky shoes, or I really wanted the cool shoes, or I remember what a stress it was for my family every year, or I was only allowed one pair of school shoes a year, something like that. But it's really interesting to start to look at what some of those stories that come up for you when you were first aware of money.
Yeah. And mine is definitely, instead of shoes, it was houses. Like that's what I remember.
Tell me more.
Just going to other people's houses and always feeling like, oh, this house is really nice. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, that house was the same, whatever, like probably price as our house. Actually, our house might have even been a little bit nicer. But in my childhood brain, it was like, oh, this one's really nice. This one must be expensive. Oh, this is a fancy house. Oh, I wish I lived here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I never had a childhood of lack. So it wasn't like, like you can look back and be like, oh yeah, we struggled to put food on the table or this or that. Like we had all the things, and I don't remember any strong stories from my parents of like, no, we can't have that, or we can't do this or that, other than they did work really, really hard. So I still have that like, oh, I got to work hard. And it's hard for me to catch myself sometimes to be like, dude, we need to take a little break. And it's okay to go sit on the back porch and read for 20 minutes.
Yeah, totally. But even, you saying that about the houses and things, what's really interesting about the work that I do is it's not as simple as, oh, you grew up poor, you've got scarcity blocks. Right. Oh, you grew up rich, whatever. It's really interesting what our brains create, but also what stories families have around money, because some people grew up like in a very middle class kind of way, but depending on how their parents talked about money, they felt like they were poor or they felt like they were rich. It could have been that their parents always talked about money in such a way that they felt like they were one week away from being kicked out on the street, but then they found out later that their parents were actually really well off. They were just extremely frugal and fearful about money. Similarly, I've heard from people who grew up like they didn't realize that their family didn't have a lot of money because just the way that their family kind of shielded them from money conversations, or they were very optimistic themselves, or everything's going to work out great, easy come, easy go, like you said.
Right.
And so it's really fascinating to start looking at your own stories, your own memories around money and what that is showing up for you today. And I'll give you an example. You might have heard growing up, it's impolite to talk about money, which is a really common thing, right? You would even think that that's not even that like damaging or anything. It's just like, it's impolite to talk about money. And they might have even said it in a really nice way of like, you never ask someone how much they weigh. You never ask someone how much they earn. Right. It's just impolite conversation. We want to keep things nice and, even. But then that might have created a story in people where they don't want to set prices, display prices, tell clients how much things cost, really like get really wishy-washy when it comes to client inquiries. hate invoicing, hate chasing up payments, hate doing upsells.
Yeah.
Because it's so impolite to talk about money. And it's just, it could be just so invisible to you. It's not like it's on a family shield. It's not like people have been, painted it on the wall in your family house, but it's still a rule regardless. You might have a family story of resilience and, we're independent and we're tough and we're hardworking. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to your business, you might really struggle to outsource. You're doing everything yourself. You might really hate things like the editing, but you don't want to outsource it because you have to do it all yourself. You fill your time. You feel guilty taking time off. It could be things like that. And so you have to look at the official and unofficial mottos of your family. Mine was, and they used to say this to me all the time, it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice. Mm-hmm. And it's really lovely. But my grandmother, she was a very kind of soft kind of woman. And so I actually thought, because I was quite outspoken, that I was like, I'm just not a polite, nice person.
Right.
And it's, I'm kind of a bitch. And if, I have to be likable and I have to, be always thinking about how I'm coming off as being down to earth and things like that. And so all of those little stories, they don't have to be traumatic for you to get information out of them. But it could even be something, I remember one person said, oh my God, I remember when I was 16, I said to my dad, I wanted to be an artist. And he said, well, that's fine, but you'll never make a cent from it. And it's almost then that became her motto.
Right.
Right, exactly.
We're so impressionable. So many times, a teacher even said, well, I remember this actually from for me. I remember, and I still I don't even remember what teacher this is, but I want to hunt them down and be like, look, there are fences on the side of highways. I remember saying at some point, you're driving on the highway, that there's fences along the side to keep the deer and stuff from the road, that there's often fences. And they're like, no, there's not. I was second grade. They're like, no. And still to this day, I'm driving on the highway and I'm like, there's another freaking fence.
Oh, that's hilarious. I totally get that. That's so funny. You're like, see?
I know. But these kids, you say something just to kids and they just take it as gospel. I mean, I remember my previous career before I became a pet photographer was a zoological animal trainer. And my daughter, I think in kindergarten, went in, I forget what it was, but she said something that was just that her teacher said that was just not accurate as far as natural history of animals. So I'm like, no, those two animals are separate animals, whatever it was. But she's like, no, the teacher said. I'm like, oh, I know more than the teacher in this particular case. She just wouldn't believe me.
But it shows, right? It's not just your upbringing, as in your immediate family. It's your friends, it's your teachers, it's society, it's TV, it's all of those things combined that create our own individual story about money. And it is very messy. And I always do the analogy of excavating that work, because I'm probably not using the right word. The strata, is that the word where it's when you look at a slice of a mountain or something like that.
Let's go for it. I think so.
Let's call it strata, right? But sometimes that's built up over centuries, right? Yeah. And so our money beliefs have been built up a day at a time, incident at a time, repetition over time, and it can be very dense and hard for us to even see. And so the work that I do is chipping away at some of those things. And sometimes you find this nugget and you go, oh my God, this is why I can't do the thing. The one thing. But then other times it's just the layers on layers of it, of the repetition of even, this is my job, right? I love finding the nuances.
Right.
I love it, love it, love it. So I started to go really top line. So one, I started interviewing different profession groups because I wanted to hear the commonalities in what were you taught even in your training. And a lot of people in the natural health world, for example, people who are naturopaths, they're explicitly told in training, I hope you're not going into this to make money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you better be going to this for the right reason, right? So I started bringing together those industry groups just to say, what's the flavor of your industry? I remember I hired someone to come and teach me ukulele in the pandemic. I thought, wouldn't this be a fun time to learn the ukulele in the pandemic? No. Anyway, I started doing some Zoom sessions because of the pandemic. And I at the end of one of them, I said, oh, look, I hope I never do this, but I just wanted to say, I really think you could up your prices a little bit. I said, I think your prices are just like really low for, and he said, well, there's one guy in town and he like teaches all of us how to teach ukulele and he kind of sets the prices. And so it's just this made up thing. And I was like, this guy might have been in the industry for decades and decades. Maybe he's even paid off his house. And so for him, he's just like, well, this is just a fun way of me giving back. But yet all of his students are capping their prices on a price that he probably set 30 years ago.
Right.
Yes. So there's those things. But then this is really fun too. Bringing together country groups or cultural groups. So I pulled together some of my English clients and I was like, okay, let's talk about like the stereotypical English values, because of course there are nuances. I'm not saying you're all the same, but you live in a country that has this flavor. And so again, sometimes it's about the contrast, right, of what you're told you have to believe and how much you deviate from it. That's why we talk about the generalities. And I said, well, one of the British values that I think as an outsider is you guys love to queue. You like to stand in lines and you like to take your turn. So I was like, let's talk about this. How is this showing up for you in your business today? And so some of them are like, well, I can't succeed unless my brother succeeds first because he's ahead of me in the queue. I can't make more than my mentors. I can't make more than my teachers. I can't make more than my friends who started in the industry a year before me. I have to wait my turn. And then, of course, if you have that waiting my turn mentality, you're not going to put yourself forward for things. You're going to wait for people to come to you and say, your number's up. Please come to the counter. And so we can learn something from all of those things. And then if we looked at the UK and broke it down into cities, sometimes cities have a particular culture. Sometimes they have a motto often, right? But it's like, what's the story of the place that you grew up in? Is it a story of resilience and hard work? Is it a story of feast or famine? Is it a story of scarcity? Is it a story of creativity and abundance? And we appreciate artists in this environment. So all of those things become your strata. Someone's going to write in and go, no,
I think you're right. At least, I'm going with it.
So tell me, so you live in North Carolina?
I do, but I grew up in Pittsburgh. Yeah,
so what's the story of Pittsburgh? Is that like working class?
Interesting that you're saying this. It was a steel town, like from World War II on, where it was like all the steel for like all of World War II was basically made in Pittsburgh. And huge, the Carnegies and like all the huge like early century money was all created in Pittsburgh out of the steel industry. And then it all went away in the late 70s, early 80s.
Interesting.
So it was this like hard work, gone. Which I'm like, oh, wow, that really mirrors my stories, which is crazy.
Because again, it might be on a shield at the town hall,
right? But
it's embedded in the school system. It's embedded in, who gets rewarded for different things. It's embedded in so many different ways. So the sporting team, are you a city that roots for the underdog, or you're a city that always wins? I mean, I grew up in Sydney, but I live in a coal town.
Yeah.
And it used to be a steel town.
Okay.
And so there's this real like egalitarian working class mentality here, where I remember there was like a guy who became a billionaire locally from coal mining, but he bought like this Lamborghini, and people are like, what a wanker, because it's just not done in this town to really showcase your wealth through things like that. People might have really nice houses, but everyone's at the beach, everyone's wearing, board shorts and flip-flops, and, you don't really want to like have that ostentatious kind of display of wealth. And so I did the same with Australians. I was like, okay, let's talk about Australian values. Yeah, it's all about mateship and being egalitarian and, And so then and which is all great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But then it was like, well, what's the story around that? And for me, I remember thinking, I can't charge Australians. So that's why I set my business up to be American, because I was like, I can charge Americans. I can't charge my mates. I can't charge Australians. And then I realized I was also including New Zealand in Australia. My circle of mateship just got bigger and bigger. And then I was like, well, I'm married to a British guy. I've lived in England. Like they're basically my cousins. And then I was like, Irish people are kind of Scottish people. And I was just expanding the group of people that I wasn't allowed to charge. We're all human. And so that's something too, if you grew up in like a real fairness culture, or, then you might think, well, it's not fair to charge this particular type of person. And so in your it might be, well, I can't charge a dog with 3 legs full price. I have to come on, I can't do that. Or, I can't charge single mums, or I can't charge whatever. And that doesn't mean people are never allowed to discount and be generous, for sure. It's just watch where those stories of fairness start to come in and to be your detriment. Here's another layer. Sorry, Nicole, I just get so excited about this.
Yeah, I like it. Let's do it.
Birth order. Birth order, right? So I'm the oldest. I feel responsible for everyone and everything. Everything's my responsibility to sort out. And so I was like, I'll work with anyone on anything. Throw me a problem, I'll solve it for you. No problem. Middle children can be the fairness ones of going, it's not fair, making sure that everyone's taken care of. And then I see sometimes babies of the family, their excuse is, well, I can't charge. No one's going to take me seriously, because they're 30 years old and they still have to sit at the kids' table at Thanksgiving.
Right. Right.
And so again, people listening, no, that's not my experience. It's just looking at the stories.
Right.
And finding those little nuances for yourself to go, hang on, why do I feel like I can't charge people? There's so many reasons. Your upbringing, what you saw on TV, as I said, your birth order, those unofficial mottos that you're living by again and again.
That's really interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned too the UK, because a lot of my UK students are just convinced that no one in the UK will pay £1,000 for dog photography, that this is only an American thing, that only Americans can sell dog photography, that doesn't work in the UK. Yeah. And
which is
now ridiculous. I'm getting a new appreciation for it.
Well, and I hear this a lot too, right? Which is why so many of British people, they go and buy from Americans and they go and buy from Australians, because other English people are not offering things.
Right.
That's why they fly to America and go to a conference and go to things, because there's not. I actually met someone who is a coach in England for the dance industry. So similar to what you do, but for dance teachers. And she was saying, there's like 80,000 coaches in the UK and there's only 3 that specialize in the dance world. And so I see those things as massive opportunities, because everyone is obsessed with their dogs. British people are obsessed with their dogs. They invented the whole dog show industry. Right? They, go to a British art gallery, see how many pictures of dogs, paintings of dogs there are. So that's either inaccurate or a massitive opportunity to be an early adopter and to set the pace of what that means. And I actually really like that. In Australia, I often see what's happening in America, because I know that will filter down to us in about 3 years. Sometimes quicker now, obviously. Yeah. But, your British clients, anyone can have that opportunity to go, wow, I mean, what's coming up and what's new? Remember when people in the kid photography world, when the cake smash thing was really cool? It's like, well, what's the next version for you and your dogs? Just why not create some cool stuff? And so I shared this before we hit record, but I had a family photo shoot recently because my mother-in-law was here from England. And so we try and capture photos because we don't see each other very often. So it's such a precious thing to be able to do that. And the kids were playing up so much, as they do, right? They're just like, I don't want to be in your photo. They're making silly faces. So I just went, oh, can we just go take pictures of me and my dogs? And so I ended up with like 30 pictures of me and my dogs. And I'm so thrilled. And I don't think I have a ton of pet photographers in my town, right? So I'm like, there are people who are so obsessed with their dogs. You know, I bought them, it's starting to be winter in Australia, so they've got jackets. They cost the same as my kids' jumpers. Like, especially when when someone gets a puppy for the first time, you're buying a brand new bed every like 3 days because you don't realize that they're going to destroy them. You know, I bought a little house for my dog recently. I spend so much money on my pets, and it's like, we think we're not allowed to charge. It's literally one of the least price sensitive industries out there because people are obsessed with their dogs. Yes. And I think it's actually a really beautiful way to educate your clients of saying, like, you know, capture these moments with your precious, beautiful dogs because they're not around forever.
Right.
You know, and you just never know when something could happen to one of your pets. And I would be devastated if I didn't have beautiful photos of them to remember them by. One of my friends and clients, she makes jewelry with, you know, people's ashes in them and things like that. And she started doing the same for people's pets.
Yeah.
You know, because people will buy, you know, a diamond ring, a pendant, a little statue with their ashes in it for their dogs as much as they would for their humans, you know, and it's a real acknowledgement that pets are family members. And so don't discount yourself, but don't discount the value that your clients put on their family members.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. You guys heard it here. It's what Denise said. So go out there and charge. You can do it.
Exactly. I'm totally obsessed. And by the way, if you add photos and videos to stock photography websites, I'm trying to do that at the moment. I'm trying to find stock photography. And it's so hard to find good pictures of people with their pets, you know, and I submit videos. And by the way, because if there are any, they're all fairly the same. And I'm like, well, where are the like people with disabilities and their pets working? And, you know, I want to see the office cats and the office dogs and things like that to be able to put into my videos and things because that's who my clients are.
Right.
You know, and there's not that diversity there. So, you know, that's another opportunity as well, is to showcase all the beautiful diversity of pet owners. Yeah,
opportunity is everywhere, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, even thinking of all the different breeds that people get absolutely obsessed over, you know, and it's like, you know, when my kids are always like, oh, my name's not on the list of, you know, the hairbrushes, the personalized hairbrushes and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, but there's not always cavoodles when you see things too. I'm like, where are the cavoodles? I was like, there's labradoodles. Where are my cavoodles? So it's like, it's really, you know, celebrating every type of client and celebrating, you know, you really could, if you wanted to, you could niche down and just go, I am the sausage dog photographer.
Yes.
You know, or I'm like the pet wedding photographer. Yeah. Or, you know, you can niche down because that's the beauty of the pet world is people get obsessed. It is
funny. Yeah, a lot of people do tend to I don't think they do it consciously, but they subconsciously start to become like a certain breed photographer because people that are really into their breeds will have other friends that are really into their breeds. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm photographing a lot of dachshunds. Oh, I've got like 4 dachshunds on my schedule over the next couple months. It's pretty funny.
That's so true. And even thinking about like the upsells, you know, and I've seen this in photographers of all industries where they'll over deliver so much, you know, and it will be like, instead of, you know, someone's paid for 20 photos and they'll give them 1,200 edited photos because they can't help themselves.
Right.
You know, it's watching those over delivery moments. But I found this with photographers in the like entrepreneurial world, because I get photos taken at least quarterly now. Yeah. Just because I have a massive need for just new photos all the time. Right. But I used to not always get the upgrades because they would make me look through 1,000 photos and pick which ones I wanted. And then my photographer, she says it's, you know, X amount for the session, you get X amount of photos. And then she's like, if you want all of the rest of them, it's like $1,000.
Right.
And for me, I've got ADHD. And so instead of like, go look through 1,000 photos and check which ones you want and pick it, and you can pay, $35 per extra photo. It's an open loop for my brain that just goes, oh, I can't be bothered. But if she just makes it easy and goes, oh, you can just have all of them, you don't even have to choose. I just go, ching,
okay,
yes,
done.
I'll add that. And that's the same thing with this family photographer lady. She was just like, you can have all the rest of them for this extra amount. And then, I can do the booklet for you. And it's those things that people can do it themselves. Of course they can. But in any industry, people say to me, but anyone can do this. They can just do it themselves. But that's not the point. People want it to be easy. They want it to turn up their beautiful picture of their pet framed so they can put it on their wall, because otherwise it will just sit on their hard drive for the rest of their life. So, there's so many opportunities, but if you're just telling yourself, oh, people can't afford it, you don't know what people can afford and what people value. You can't judge based on that. But also, again, if you're charging 80% of your clients win-win pricing that they gladly pay, it then gives you that 20% leeway to say, you know what, that family really touched me and I know that they can't afford it, so I'm going to give them the gallery upgrade. Yeah. But if you're doing that for everyone, you're just burnt out and resentful.
Right. Absolutely. Very well said. I hope this has encouraged you guys to get out there and try to increase your pricing and feel good about it and start to ask yourself some of the questions that Denise posed to me and see what comes up for you. But before we go, Denise, you just wrote a brand new book, an updated book. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So my book is called Chill and Prosper. It's not about the dog industry. I wish. No, it's about...
That'll be the sequel.
Yes. Well, funnily you say that because I also create money mindset guides for different industries, and photographers are next on my list. So keep close on that one. But Chill and Prosper is about my business philosophy of making things as easy as possible for yourself. So it's finding the path of least resistance in creating your business model, in marketing, in setting your prices, and also in setting boundaries with your clients. So I have a ton of scripts in there. There's a lot of case studies just to give yourself permission, the mindset permission, to be able to chill and prosper, literally to do things in a way that's fun and enjoyable and profitable. So I've got a ton of pre-order bonuses for people as well. If you go to denisedt.com/prosper, you can see the links to buy the book all over the place, and you can put in your details and get all those pre-order bonuses as well.
Awesome. So yeah, you guys get out there and do that because it comes out, it gets released on July 19th. So you need to order before then. So
yes, exactly.
Right now, go do it.
And send me pictures of your pets. That's a must.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Denise, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Really appreciate it. And I know my community is going to absolutely love this conversation. So thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Hair of the Dog podcast. This was episode number 152. If you want to check out the show notes for access to any of the resources that we mentioned, simply go to www.hairofthedogacademy.com/152.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Hair of the Dog podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please take a minute to leave a review. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. One last thing, if you are ready to dive into more resources, head over to our website at www.hairofthedogacademy.com. Thanks for being a part of this pet photography community. Part of this pet photography community.